She called the cops and screamed, "He's stealing from the neighborhood. He's hoarding water." Her voice cracked through the morning air like a siren. I stood on my land, 5 acres of dry, cracked soil, and watched 3 patrol cars roll up, their tires crunching over gravel. The officer looked confused, glancing between me and the small pond behind my barn. That pond had been here long before the Hoa existed, built by my grandfather's hands. Karen, yeah, that's what we called her, though her real name was Cheryl, stood there with a clipboard, sunglasses on, and that smug smile that made everyone's blood boil. "This man's illegally storing water during a drought," she barked. "He's violating Hoa Code 12C. That's a $50,000 fine." I wanted to laugh, but my hands were shaking too hard. 50 grand, for keeping rainwater on my own land. "Ma'am," the officer said slowly, "this is a private property." But she cut him off. "No, it's community property. He's diverting runoff meant for everyone else." The officer looked at me like he wasn't sure what to believe. I stayed quiet, because arguing with Cheryl was like wrestling smoke, you never win, you just get choked. I just said, "That pond's been here since 1978. Check the county maps." She smirked. "Then you won't mind if the Hoa drains it." Tomorrow. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of frogs croaking by the water used to calm me, but now every splash felt like a countdown. I knew she'd actually do it, she'd done worse to others. She'd towed my neighbor's truck for parking, too close to the mailbox. She'd fined an old veteran for hanging an American flag, too low. So I stood there in the moonlight, staring at the dam my grandfather built, the one holding back the only thing keeping my land alive. And that's when I realized something. If she wanted control over water so bad, maybe I'd let her have all of it, at once. I whispered to myself, "You wanted a flood, Karen. You'll get one." And I picked up my shovel. 10/5, 2:27 p.m. Hafiz Muhammad Yusuf. By sunrise, the whole street buzzed like a hornet's nest. Hoa trucks, orange vests, and Karen's shrill orders filled the air. "Drain it clean. He's been stealing from the community for months," she yelled, waving that same clipboard like it was a weapon. The workers hesitated. They weren't sure if they even had permission, but her voice could cut through steel. I stood at my porch, calm this time. Inside me, something had shifted. I'd already spent the night digging a trench along the dam, nothing major, just enough for nature to finish what it started. My plan wasn't destruction, it was proof. Proof that I wasn't hoarding anything. Proof that what she called stolen water was just the rain, flowing where it belonged. Karen strutted over to me, her perfume hitting before her words did. "You have 2 choices," she said. "Pay the fine or face legal eviction. The Hoa won't tolerate selfishness." I smiled, slow and quiet. "You might wanna step back, Cheryl." She frowned. "Excuse me." Then, right on cue, the ground rumbled, a low, deep growl from the dam behind the barn. A second later, water surged over the edge, roaring through the trench I'd opened. The workers screamed and jumped back as the muddy torrent rushed past, soaking everything in its path, including Karen's freshly polished shoes. "What did you do?" she shrieked, stumbling backward. "Just letting nature handle the rest," I said. The water poured into the Hoa's manicured flower beds, flooded their fancy new walking trail, and swept straight through the communal lawn Karen had bragged about at every meeting. Her clipboard floated by like a tiny defeated ship. She turned red, pointing a trembling finger at me. "You're finished. I'm calling the county. You destroyed community property." I just crossed my arms. "Funny, you said it was your property yesterday." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The cameras were already recording, neighbors filming from their porches, laughing under their breath. For once, the Queen of Rules had lost control. And that was just the beginning. 10/5, 2:28 p.m. Hafiz Muhammad Yusuf. By noon, the whole neighborhood had seen the videos. Karen's white SUV was parked sideways in front of my gate as she yelled into her phone, trying to sound important. "Yes, I said 50,000 in damages." He flooded the Hoa grounds intentionally. But every time she turned, another neighbor lifted their phone to record her meltdown. I stood by the fence, leaning on my shovel like a man who had all day. "Karen," I called out, "you might wanna stop talking before you make it worse." She spun around, eyes blazing. "You think this is funny? You're finished. The Hoa is suing you, and the county inspector's already on his way." Perfect, I thought. That's exactly what I wanted. Half an hour later, a county truck pulled up. Out stepped an older man in a dusty hat, Mr. Harris, the environmental inspector. He shook my hand first. Been a while, John, he said with a grin. Still keeping your granddad's pond alive? Karen froze. Wait, you know him? Harris glanced at her, unimpressed. Ma'am, this pond is part of a registered conservation zone. His grandfather signed it into protection back in '78. It's legal, it's historic, and it's protected under state law. Her jaw dropped. That can't be right, he's hoarding water. It's on video. The inspector chuckled. Rainwater, ma'am, you can't hoard rain. He turned to me. Looks like you're in the clear. But if she or her crew tampered with the dam, that's a different story. Environmental damage, potential fines, maybe even trespassing. I looked right at her. You hear that? You might owe me $50,000 now. The crowd behind her laughed. Karen's face turned pale as paper. She stammered, you can't do this. I am the WA. But Harris cut her off sharply. No, ma'am, the law is the law. WA rules don't override state protection acts. That's when she realized she'd just drowned herself in her own power trip. And me, I just smiled, watching the water glisten under the sun, knowing the real flood hadn't even started yet. 10/5, 2:28 p.m. Hafiz Muhammad Yusuf. That evening, Karen's empire started to crumble. The WA group chat, the one she ruled like a queen, was now full of angry messages. Screenshots popped up everywhere. Neighbors complaining about fake fines, threats, and all the money she'd collected without ever showing receipts. Turns out, I wasn't the only one she tried to squeeze dry. I sat on my porch, sipping coffee, when my neighbor, old Mr. Jenkins, walked up. Heard what you did, he said with a grin. About time someone stood up to that woman. Behind him, two more families nodded, holding folders. We've been keeping records, one of them said. Every notice, every false fee. You think your inspector friend might wanna see these? I smiled. He'd love to. By the next morning, Karen's SUV was gone. But her husband, who never showed up to anything, was out front, arguing with two sheriff deputies. She stood behind them, still in her robe, clutching her phone like a lifeline. One deputy looked annoyed. Ma'am, these folks filed a report against you for impersonating an officer and issuing fraudulent fines. We have to take you in for questioning. Her voice cracked. What? I am the president of the HOA. The deputy sighed. Ma'am, that's not a government position. She screamed something about neighborhood standards and community image, but it didn't matter. They guided her to the cruiser while neighbors filmed from every angle. One of them shouted, "Hey Karen, the dam finally broke." And the crowd burst out laughing. I didn't say a word. Just watched her drive off, her perfect hair catching the flashing red and blue light. But what no one knew yet was that I'd been holding onto one last card, one that would make sure she could never pull this on anyone again. Because when I dug that trench, I didn't just let the water flow. I uncovered something my grandfather had hidden for decades. And it was about to change everything. 10/5, 2:29 p.m. Hafiz Muhammad Yusuf. When the floodwater had rushed through the dam that morning, it had carved a deep line through the mud, deeper than I expected. Later that night, after everyone left and the road went quiet again, I went down there with a flashlight. The beam caught something half buried near the base of the dam, an old metal box, rusted and heavy. I pried it open. Inside were water-stained papers, a few black and white photos, and a small deed envelope stamped by the county office. The papers were still legible enough to read one line clearly. Property boundaries and mineral rights retained by the Landry family in perpetuity. Mineral rights. That meant everything beneath this land, every rock, spring, and water source, belonged to me. Not the WA, not the county. Me. The next morning, I called Mr. Harris, the inspector. When he arrived, I handed him the papers. He whistled. John, this here makes your property untouchable. They can't fine you for water you literally own. I grinned. Thought you might say that. Word spread fast. By afternoon, Karen's replacement, some nervous-looking guy with a tie too tight, came knocking. Mr. Landry, we, wanted to discuss possible compensation for the damage to your dam. I leaned against the doorframe. You mean the one your team illegally tampered with? He swallowed hard. Right, that one. Behind him, reporters were already parked on the street. The video of Karen's arrest had gone viral, WA Queen drowned by her own rules. Thousands of comments poured in, people cheering, veterans saying things like, that man stood his ground right. I looked straight into the camera lens across the road and said calmly, I don't fight for power. I fight for peace on my own land. And just when I thought it was over, Harris called me that night. John, about those mineral rights, you might wanna get an attorney. Looks like you've got more under that ground than just water. I froze. What do you mean? He chuckled. You're sitting on a natural spring, and possibly an aquifer that runs for miles. For the first time, I realized, Karen's obsession with my pond wasn't just control. Someone had told her what was underneath. And now I needed to find out who. 10/5, 2:30 p.m. Hafiz Muhammad Yusuf. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of a helicopter circling overhead. At first, I thought it was news coverage again, but when I stepped outside, I saw the logo on the side, Ridgewell Energy Corp. My gut twisted. They were one of the biggest private water companies in the state, known for buying out rural lands and drilling deep wells for profit. I grabbed my phone and called Harris. You didn't tell anyone about the spring, did you? He paused too long. John, someone from the county office might have leaked it. These corporations track conservation filings like vultures. Before I could respond, 2 black SUVs rolled up the dirt road. Out stepped 3 suits and a woman in heels who looked like she'd never walked on soil before. Mr. Landry, she called out, flashing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm Victoria Ridgewell. My company would like to make you a generous offer for your land. We understand there's a valuable water source beneath it. I almost laughed. Let me guess, Karen tipped you off before she got cuffed. Her smile flickered for a second. Let's just say she was helpful. $50,000, and we'll take care of any cleanup costs from the flood. 50,000, I repeated, almost amused. Funny number. 10/5, 2:30 p.m. Hafiz Muhammad Yusuf. That night, I barely slept. The sound of the wind against the dam felt heavier, almost like the land itself was holding its breath. Around midnight, headlights flashed outside my window, slow, creeping lights that didn't belong to anyone around here. I stepped onto the porch with my old flashlight and caught the shape of 2 figures by the fence line. They were trying to pry open the gate. Can I help you boys? I called out. They froze. One muttered something and bolted. The other dropped his crowbar and stumbled after him. I walked down to the fence and found a metal tag lying in the dirt, Ridgewell Energy, stamped right across it. By morning, I had cameras up, calls made, and my lawyer, an old army buddy named Cole, on the way. He'd been with me overseas, a guy who knew how to fight battles the right way. You're telling me they're trespassing already? He said over the phone. That's corporate intimidation. Don't worry, we'll handle it. By noon, Cole arrived, dust still on his boots. Here's the plan, he said. We document every move they make. And when they cross that line again, we don't call the sheriff, we call the feds. EPA, Department of Natural Resources, the works. If Ridgewell's messing with protected land, they're cooked. He grinned. And we'll make sure the world knows. Later that day, I went into town for supplies. At the gas station, people whispered as I walked in, half proud, half scared. One old man nodded at me. You're the fella with the dam, right? Saw it on the news. Folks say you're standing up to Ridgewell. I just nodded, trying to. As I drove back, I noticed a black SUV parked by the old oak at the corner of my property. Same tinted windows, same quiet engine running. I slowed down, met the driver's eyes through the glass, and he rolled up the window. They weren't done. That night, Cole and I sat by the dam under the stars, watching the cameras, red lights blink. He said quietly, you know, John, you could walk away. Sell, move somewhere quiet. I looked at the water, calm and steady. My granddad built this dam with his bare hands. This land's our story, and no one, Karen, or Ridgewell, is rewriting it. Cole smirked. Then we fight. And right then, a sudden splash echoed from the pond. I turned the flashlight toward the water. Something was floating. It wasn't a log. It was a plastic barrel, with Ridgewell's logo on it. And it was leaking something into my water. 10/5, 2:31 p.m. Hafiz Muhammad Yusuf. I ran down the slope with my flashlight bouncing through the dark, the beam cutting across ripples on the surface. The barrel bobbed against the rocks, hissing softly where the liquid leaked into the pond. I yanked it toward the bank and tore off the label, Ridgewell Energy, Chemical Transport, Hydroseal -9. My heart dropped. That wasn't just industrial runoff. That was drilling fluid, illegal to dump, especially near a natural spring. Cole was right behind me. Don't touch it, he warned. He pulled out his phone and started filming. Get this on record. They're poisoning your water, John. By morning, we had the footage uploaded to 3 places: the county, the EPA, and every local reporter who'd been chasing Karen's story. Within hours, it blew up. Headline after headline: company accused of sabotaging protected land. Ridgewell's PR team scrambled, denying everything, but the video was too clear. Their barrel, their label, their mess. That afternoon, 2 black SUVs came back. Only this time, they weren't the same Ridgewell suits. These guys were in federal jackets, EPA and state investigators. The lead agent, a tall woman with sharp eyes, walked right up to me. "Mr. Landry, we got your video. You just uncovered one of the largest illegal dumping operations we've seen in this county." Behind her, Ridgewell's representatives were being handcuffed by sheriff deputies. Victoria Ridgewell herself stood near her car, speechless, her perfect smile gone. I folded my arms. "Guess the water doesn't like being owned, huh?" She glared at me. "You don't understand what you've done." "Oh, I do," I said quietly. "You tried to poison the same land my grandfather protected. And you got caught." The agent turned toward her. "Ms. Ridgewell, you have the right to remain silent." The crowd that gathered, neighbors, reporters, even Mr. Harris, watched in stunned silence as she was led away. One of the reporters called out, "Mr. Landry, any words for the people watching?" I looked at the dam, still standing strong despite everything, the sunlight glinting off the water. "Yeah," I said, "they fined me for hoarding water. Turns out, I was saving the truth." Cole chuckled beside me. "That's gonna make the headline." But deep down, I knew something bigger had shifted. Karen's HOA was gone. Ridgewell was exposed. Yet part of me couldn't shake the thought, if they were willing to risk everything to get this land, then maybe there was still more under here than anyone knew. And I was going to find out exactly what my grandfather was really protecting. 10/5, 2:32 p.m. Hafiz Muhammad Yusuf. 2 weeks later the land was quiet again. No SUVs, no helicopters, no Karen screaming at the top of her lungs. The dam sat where it always had, water glinting in the morning light like nothing had happened. But now there were survey flags all around it, bright orange markers put up by the state. The spring had been declared a protected resource under my ownership. Ridgewell's executives were facing federal charges. Karen had resigned from the WA and was fighting her own legal mess. But I still couldn't shake the mystery of that metal box I'd found. One evening, I spread all the papers out on my kitchen table, going over every line of my grandfather's handwriting. In one of the old photographs, I noticed something strange: a stone marker with a carved emblem, an eagle and 2 stars, on a ridge behind the dam. I'd never seen it before. The next morning, Cole and I hiked up to the ridge. After half an hour, we found it exactly where the photo showed. The stone was half buried, moss covering most of it. Underneath the moss were words etched deep. U.S. Geological Survey, Strategic Water Reserve, 1954. Cole let out a low whistle. "John, this isn't just a spring. This was part of a Cold War water reserve program. Your grandfather wasn't just saving land. He was guarding a classified resource." My mind spun. All this time, Karen and Ridgewell thought they were fighting a stubborn farmer. They had no idea this place had been federal property once, then privately deeded to my family as a trust. Cole grinned. "That means the government might owe you back pay for keeping it protected. And no one, not Hoa or Ridgewell, can touch it without breaching national security." I stared at the water below, feeling the weight of it. This wasn't just about my family anymore. This was about freedom, about stewardship, about keeping something alive that others would exploit until it was gone. Down below, kids were playing by the edge of the dam again, skipping stones like it was the most normal thing in the world. Neighbors had started rebuilding the walking trail on their own, without the Hoa's say-so. It wasn't just land anymore. It had become a community again, free from fake rules, free from a petty queen with a clipboard. I turned to Cole. "Granddad would have loved this," I said quietly. He clapped my shoulder. "He'd be proud you finished the fight he started." For the first time in months, I felt my chest loosen. I wasn't just defending dirt and water. I was protecting a promise. And as the sun set over the dam, the water shimmered like a sheet of gold, untouchable, unowned, and free at last.